Welcome back to Mac and Mike. I'm Mike, and over there, be Mac. So we're together again this week, and we're doing things a little different. As Mac came over, we didn't have much time to sit and discuss what we were going to talk about. But, I'm always sort of against talking about things that are in the news because everybody's talking about it. But I'll make an exception, and we may veer off into different subjects, so please bear with us. It was the debt ceiling thing that had me confused. So everybody knows about the continuing resolution. It's been in the news. It was passed by the House and the Senate. The bill was cut down from 1,500 pages to 108, 18 or something. So that was a significant cutback in that. I guess both sides are declaring victory, but the thing that Trump wanted was he wanted no debt limit on the ceiling. So they didn't vote for that. And I was wondering, most Republicans are conservative, and we don't want...
I wish that were true. Actually, most Republicans are not conservative.
Well,
Republicans are more conservative than Democrats, but there's only several dozen in the House and the Senate that are actually conservative.
Yeah, I guess the ones that voted against it, what are they called, the Freedom Caucus?
Yep.
So I was so confused about this, and I consider myself halfway politically savvy. So just this morning I was watching, and Trump's former economic advisor was on kind of explaining it. And the thing he said was Joe Biden had borrowed $7 trillion in order to get his agenda passed, the Green New Deal and all that. And so that debt needs to be serviced. And you can't service that debt unless you have no limit on the debt ceiling. So you think about it like your home mortgage, and most people have a credit card. So you have a limit on your how much you can borrow. But imagine having somebody increase your debt. Say your wife. I was trying to think of an analogy. Your wife goes out and borrows, $50,000 that you didn't expect. Well, you've got to service that debt because that's part of you, but it's on her. It's like this problem is on Biden, and Trump doesn't want to have it look like it's on him.
Well, let's be honest. The growing massive federal debt is on Republicans and Democrats for the last 30 years. I mean, Biden and Barack Obama as well exponentially increased it, but so did Donald Trump,
yes.
To be honest with you. I mean, now Trump spent it most on rebuilding the military that was vastly damaged by the cuts made by the Democrats. But, the national debt is a crisis for America. Maybe not for you and me because we'll be dead, but for our children and our grandchildren. And the insidiousness of the debt is its impact on the value of the dollar. People go into the grocery store and they say, look at how expensive this stuff is. Mm-hmm. Well, look, the value of the goods hasn't changed. The value of the dollar has changed.
Right.
If you have, I'm pulling these numbers out of my ass, but if you have $10 million in treasury notes, dollar bills in various forms floating around the world, and all of a sudden you add another $10 million of these bills and you change nothing else, what that means is the dollar is worth half as much as it used to be because there's twice as many dollars.
Yep. And
that's what people fail to realize. When we run up this massive debt, what we're doing is we're taxing ourselves
and our children.
And more importantly, our children and their children and their children who are going to have to pay off this debt. And, after World War II, with the United States of America, the Lend-Lease program and all that kind of stuff, we're going to help rebuild the rest of the world. We did that. Mm-hmm. And most of these companies accrued debt to us. And guess what they paid? Most of them never paid any of the money back. And, what that did is that started the spiral of how the United States dollar, which was used throughout most of the industrialized nations today as the reserve currency, it's now weakening the dollar to the point where we have significant problems and something has to be done. And that's what the conservatives were fighting for. And I think ultimately that's what Donald Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk are fighting for, to get the debt under control so it can be paid down, maybe even eliminated. And that would make our country stronger economically.
Yeah, and again, I wish I could remember the name of the economic advisor that was just on television of Trump's. But he did point out that, with all this fretting about everything, he said, look, we had Donald Trump as a president, and inflation did not get out of control, because
Right.
that's one of the things that's been caused by the amount of money that Joe Biden and his administration spent. And it's
Printed and spent.
printed and spent, yeah, because that's the one thing you and I can't do. We can't just go out and print money and say to our bank, here, I just printed these extra monopoly money dollar bills I'm going to give you. But that's basically what it is.
Do you remember when Obama did we're going to do all this infrastructure so we can do these shovel-ready jobs?
Yeah.
And then 2 years into the program, when they were paying teachers overtime pay, and they were spending money on just about everything other than shovel-ready jobs. And Obama famously said, well, it turns out he's laughing about
Right.
it. Seems like shovel-ready jobs weren't really shovel-ready.
Yeah, no kidding.
And that kind of frivolous, how much money did we give to Solyndra because they were making solar panels? And we lost all of that money because Solyndra went bankrupt. They went out of business. It's one thing when you pay money and you get something in return. I'm all for new highways. Let's build them. I'm all for updated and rebuilt and modernized airports. That serves as that's an asset for America. But when you take that money and you spend it on the mating habits of the snail darter, you've got nothing but a piece of paper that's pretty much worthless, because who really cares about the mating habits of the snail darter? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have to, and that's where, I don't want to dominate this, but
Go ahead.
You know what Donald Trump said? He said, we're going to create a system where if you invest $1 billion in infrastructure in the United States of America, not building a new plant in Mexico, not building a new plant in Indonesia, not building a new plant in India. If you invest $1 billion hard dollars of infrastructure in the United States of America, we will basically streamline every permit, every authority, every permission that you need to build that in a record period of time. And see, what people fail to realize is when IBM, and I'm not picking on IBM, put in there any name of any company you want, but XYZ company builds a new plant in India, guess who benefits? India. They get the construction jobs. They get the jobs that are making whatever they're making after the plant is built. They get the revenue. One of the things about a manufacturing job is you take raw material and you take human labor, both at a fixed cost, and you put them together and you create something that's worth exponentially more than the cost of the raw material and the labor. So you have a new value. You're creating value when you sell the product that's been manufactured. And that created value is where the magic is. And unfortunately, the United States of America, since World War II, maybe 1960s, we've been exporting jobs all over the country. So, what Donald Trump says is brilliant, right? And I know that this whole continuing resolution thing is very popular, but there was a time in our nation when we actually had a budget every year.
Yeah.
The federal government issued a budget every year.
Isn't there a law that says they have to do it?
And they had to go through and figure out how much money. You and I both worked for the military. Mm-hmm. What happened in June or May every year? Hey, what do we need to order? Yep. We got some money left in the books. We've got to spend
Use
it.
Use or lose.
If we don't spend it, we won't get it next year.
Yep.
I mean, how insane is that kind of mentality? And that's a small part in the military. Just think about that throughout all of the
other agencies
in the government. And when did? And I'm picking on the Pentagon, but I'm a big supporter of the Pentagon. The United States of America is what she is because the military is there to defend and protect us and to keep us free. But the Pentagon hasn't. They've never actually had an audit that successfully was completed and accounted for all the funds they have. Never. Like in not ever. See, that's the thing that pisses me off beyond. That's why when you talk about, well, Biden spent $7 trillion over the last 4 years. That's a lot of money. I, people say trillion like they're talking about. Hey, there's a duck.
Yeah.
A trillion is a huge sum of money. A billion is a huge sum of money. A million is a huge sum of money. And exponentially, to get from million to billion and trillion, how many homes does Zelensky have? President Zelensky of Ukraine?
I have no clue.
Multiple. Okay. Where did he get that money? Is Ukraine making a lot of money today? I mean, maybe they're farming and they're selling all of their produce, or maybe they're building stuff that we don't know about. Theoretically, I've heard this as a rumor. There are labs that are building bio and chemical weapons in chemical and bio labs in Ukraine. I don't know if any of that's true, but maybe they're making money selling that stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
But how does Zelensky get to be a multimillionaire? Because honestly, that's not a criticism. It's not even an accusation. Here's a guy that had nothing. All of a sudden, he's got multiple mansions in many countries across the world. He's got his own private jet. And you ask yourself, where'd that money come from?
I don't know. I know he was a television personality and comedian before he became president. So I don't know. I guess you'd have to research and ask what was his net worth prior to becoming president and find out, see if we can discover that.
And again, that's not an accusation. It's merely a question.
Look at our own political creatures, except for Trump.
Yeah. Who was it that just introduced legislation so that members of Congress are unable to invest in the stock market while they're in office?
Yeah, and their spouses. I don't know who put that in.
I don't know who did, but somebody did. And I think anything that gives an appearance of impropriety should be banned, should be outlawed. Not only shouldn't there be any impropriety, there shouldn't be any appearance of impropriety. So, that's what I believe about leadership anyways.
Yeah, what is Paul Pelosi's return on his investments? 65%?
Yeah.
Unheard of. There's something going on there.
So when they put a 1,500-page bill in front of Congress and said, pass this into law, and there were raises for Congress in there, and there was all kinds of pork, which people talk endlessly about. And, government is what it is, and there are always going to be pet projects in there. And somebody's pet project or somebody's pork project is actually somebody else's. When they go in there and there's money ID'd, earmarked for a bridge across the Susquehanna River in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, we probably need another bridge across the Susquehanna River. The traffic across there with the 3 main arteries that we have is horrendous. So maybe we do need it. But that's somebody's. See, the people in Alaska look at that and say that's a pork project, right? I look at it and say it's desperately needed. But I understand how one person's pork is another person's needed infrastructure. My only point is that, there's always going to be some, quote, pork in legislative bills. But we have to get a handle on it. But when people are distracted by these these discretionary spending, right? I mean, what we have to deal with as a nation is the discretionary spend, the non-discretionary spending. When I tell you that Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, military pensions. When I tell you that these promises, Social Security, when I tell you that these promises are the ones that can't be changed, people get mad. Well, you don't touch the third rail. What we have to do as a nation is we have to come to grips with it's no longer 1960.
Yes.
We can't continue to pay everyone else in the world's bills and still be healthy ourselves. One of the things my father taught me when I was a young man was it's noble and you're supposed to do it. It is actually your responsibility to help others. But if you're not capable of helping others, if you're not okay, you can't help somebody else. And that's where the United States of America is right now. We're almost to the level where we can't help anyone anymore. We have gangs in Chicago that are fighting against the new immigrant gangs coming from south of the border. And I saw an interview with a couple of these, gang members in the south side of Chicago, and they said, look, the way things are going, we're literally going to have armed conflict in the streets. I mean, armed conflict that the cops won't be able to manage, won't
Right.
be able to stop. And he said, we're building towards that right now, and nobody cares. And I think we should care about that. You know, I don't think that all of these illegal immigrants that are in this nation that are costing us literally millions and maybe even billions of dollars should be allowed to be there. That's part of the debt crisis. You know, when you say debt, you know, when you say 7 trillion, where does that money go to? I'll tell you where it went to. It went for hotel rooms in New York City and Chicago and Los Angeles for these illegal immigrants across the border illegally, and we're feeding them, we're clothing them, we're giving them debit cards every month.
And the Green New Deal.
Yeah, I mean, see, conservatives want to focus on the Green New Deal, and we want to focus on DEI, and we want to focus on woke and all those other things. And I prefer to think about it from the other perspective. Instead of just doing continue, would everybody understand what a continuing resolution is? What a continuing resolution says is, you know, 13 years ago, or whenever the hell it was that we did our last budget, this was our budget. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a continuing resolution that has a start date and an end date. And it says that we will spend, for this period of time, we will spend 3%, 4%, 5%, 2%, whatever the number is, of what we spent last year. So every year, all we're doing is we're taking the priorities that we had the last time there was a budget, and we're adding 2% or 3% or 4% every time we do a continuing resolution. All that does is perpetuate the stupid shit that we did a long time ago. Do you know how much has changed in the last 10 years? There was no money in the budget for AI 10 years ago. Nobody even knew about it. So don't you think it's reasonable and responsible for our government to manage somehow the development and the oversight of AI in this nation? Because I kind of do. Continuing resolutions doesn't do that. And my point is that what we need to do is, and people don't want to hear this, but we need to take a hard look at the non-discretionary mandatory spending that the government does. Look, I'm on Social Security. I'm sorry. I'm 70 years old. I worked a long time. The deal was they take money out of my check. I put it in. I made more money in my 401k than I made Social Security, just in case you're wondering. But my point with this is that I didn't have a choice. They did not give me a choice. This is the deal we're giving you, McCormick. This is your deal. This is Social Security. Okay, so now I'm collecting. Now I'm going to be pissed a little bit if they change my Social Security because that was the deal I had my entire life, and they didn't give me a choice. What about the people today? When Social Security was founded, and you know this, Mike, founded by FDR, you were able to get Social Security at age 62. Now that age 62 was important because the average lifespan of a male in America, North America, the United States of America, when it was when Social Security was established, was 61 and a half years old. So they established Social Security at age 62 so that those men who were dying at 65 and a half years old would have money that would go to their widows and orphans. Social Security is never meant to be a retirement plan. It was meant to be a widows and orphan safety net, okay? Now what we do is nobody plans for retirement, but they figure when they get Social Security, that's their money. That's going to be enough. It isn't enough, by the way. But if they enacted it when the average lifespan of a man collecting Social Security at age 62 was 61 and a half, it doesn't take a genius to figure out, hey, most guys didn't collect the money, but their widows and children did get something. Now, our average lifespan of a white guy in America, 77, 78 years old. So if you retire when you're 62, you're collecting, until you're 78, that's a hell of a deal. They haven't changed the program that much. There has to be realization of the differences in lifespan, and there needs to be, as my friend the accountant, I won't mention his name, but a well-respected friend of mine who is a CPA, who's an accountant, he was a member of the state legislature, would say there needs to be means-based testing. That is, if you're a multi-millionaire like Elon Musk, when you retire, you're not collecting Social Security because guess what? You don't need that money. Now, it's a whole different matter if we're talking about Medicare because that's a separate plan and a separate program. But you don't need Social Security. Now, is that cheating Elon Musk if he doesn't get Social Security? Damn right it is. But there needs to be a means-based part of the Social Security program that will enable us to continue the Social Security program a lot longer. when you got full Social Security at age 62, you now get full Social Security at what, age 66 and 2/3 or 66 and 8 months or something like that to get full.
I think it's later than that. I think it's 70. But
they've added some time to the age of full retirement. But the point I'm trying to drive at is that the retirement age for Social Security needs to be 70, or it needs to be 72. It needs to be some age that recognizes that life expectancy has changed, and that'll have a dramatic impact on the cost of that program for Americans. And it'll force Americans who are not yet retired to figure out some other way to pay for their retirement. Maybe what we do is we phase it in over a period of time. So the people who are age 62 right now don't get crapped on with no advance now. Maybe what we do is for people that are 52 and younger, we put this new program into place so that eventually there's relief. And I'm picking number 52 out of the air. It could be 58. It could be some number that somebody has to, some accountant, some actuary needs to work the numbers, how many people there are, how many people are lining up, how many people, what the pay is going to be, and they can, it's just numbers. You can do the math. But that's why this continuing resolution and the need for a budget is so important. Because the way we're going, all we're doing is we're stealing our kids' and grandkids' future. And I'm talking too much. You talk for a while.
Well, the one point you touched on is something that every year politicians try and scare people with is, oh, the Republicans, or name that party or person, they're going to cut Social Security. No politician, I've looked at this, no politician has ever once suggested in reducing Social Security for people already collecting it. It's just sort of like in the military when, you had a RIF, a reduction in force.
Mm-hmm.
So you did that through gradual retirements. You just didn't replace people.
Right.
And that's similar to what's been suggested with Social Security. As you pointed out, you picked 52 to 58. At some point, you say, okay, in 2026, the earliest you can collect Social Security is 63. In 2028, the earliest you can collect it is 64. And you do this incrementally, like every year, every 2 years, until you get to the point that you're not going to bankrupt Social Security, because that's
right.
Exactly what's going to happen, because they keep pulling money out of that fund, which is supposed to be untouchable, but they keep touching it. Makes no sense.
And the other thing you have to understand is that there is no limit to Medicare and Medicaid. In other words, they don't say we've spent all our money.
Right.
They just keep spending money as long as people make claims against it. And one of the problems that is crushing our Medicaid and Medicare funding is the illegal immigrants that are cashing in against Medicaid. We passed a law several years ago that if a illegal immigrant with no insurance, how the government with the Obamacare, we make insurance available to everybody, but an illegal immigrant shows up at a hospital and they don't have any money and they don't have any insurance, do you know what the hospital must do?
They have to accept the person.
They must
write
treat
it off.
They must treat the person.
Yeah.
So where that money comes from is Medicare and Medicaid, and because there are no other programs that pay those kinds of expenses, and sometimes they never get paid. And there are literally hospitals that go out of business.
I was going to say, yeah, they close hospitals all the time.
And when the hospital closes, who wins in that scenario? Certainly not the community, right? The community doesn't have the resources they used to have. So it's not a matter of I'm mean and I don't want to take care of these people. The reality is that we have to take care of ourselves in order to be able to take care of others, and that's the prime directive. That's the prime.
The prime directive. I like that. Star Trek.
Prime responsibility.
No, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And the Bible teaches that too. That we need to take care of the family and ourselves first, and you can't give what you don't have. If you have plenty, like you and I, we're generous people. I'm sure. But we've been given, and you get to the point where you can't give anymore, and you say, I don't know what to do. But then you got to look at what you're giving to and why you're giving it. And see, you were touching on morality too. It's our moral obligation to do X, Y, and Z. And again, I go back to this. As Christians, you and I are morally obligated to take care of the foreigner in our land, but here's the caveat. That was written in a day and a time when we didn't have Social Security or social systems and welfare, because you do that through charity. And once the charities run out, guess what? People start to starve and they stop coming to the country.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be.
Well, several years ago, when President Obama was president, they opened up these new, we have a part of the United States government that provides housing for people, HHS, Housing and Human Services. And they built this new building in Chicago, and they're making these kind of low-cost, low-rent apartments available to those in need. And literally thousands of people lined up in line to get one of these apartments. The brand new building, very low cost. And the local television station doing man in the street kind of interviews with all these people. And what are you doing? I'm in here to get a place to live. And well, how much is that going to cost you? Oh, it's not going to cost me anything. Well, where's the money come from? From Obama. Well, where did Obama get it? Oh, it's Obama's stash. It's Obama's stash. And, that is a lighthearted moment of people in the streets, maybe some of them without a great deal of education. They figure when the government provides it, it's free.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying for that.
It's free to them.
It's free. Nobody's paying for that. Well, the truth is that the money that people like you and I and others, pay, taxes, they pay for it. The corporations, the many and various ways in which they tax us throughout our lifetime, both local and city and state and county and federal government taxes. They all, they're all paying for one part or another of the services that we get. You go to that park in around the corner from your house, and you go play basketball or you play bocce ball in the park, or there's a baseball field where your kids can play baseball. Where does that come from? Somebody pays for it. It's some form of government that's paying for that, and the money comes from taxes. There's no free lunch. Somebody's paying for it. So my point is that if you want to continue to receive all of these services from government, there must literally, figuratively, it's not an unlimited resource. You can't keep draining, and the way government is paying for it right now is just printing money. And what we know from printing money is if you have $10 million in circulation, you add $10 million in circulation, the money is worth half as much as it used to be because there's double the amount of money. That's not a hard concept to follow. So my point is that when we say it's Obama's stash, or we say it's from the government, it's free, it's not. And that's where we're talking about. That's where the rubber meets the road in this whole debt ceiling. What they wanted to do was to add an additional $5 trillion onto the debt ceiling. And what that does is that enables government to continue spending like they're spending without little oversight or little control until they spend that additional $5 trillion, and guess what they'll do then? The government's going to shut down. We got to raise the debt ceiling. And you raise the debt ceiling enough until... Now, to be fair, our nation is not the worst nation in the world with national debt. But since we are the world trade currency and we are the reserve currency of many other nations in the world, we have a moral obligation to maintain a strong currency. We just do.
You are hitting on such an important point.
Yeah.
That is an understatement. If you look at the GDP of a lot of countries versus their debt and compare it to the United States, we're doing a lot better than most. Mm-hmm. We're not the best in the world, but we're doing better than most. And to put it in perspective that the viewer can understand. So let's say you're working and you're making $100,000 a year. That's your GDP, gross domestic income or product. Now, this is where it gets a little wonky. Say you buy a house, if you're, I don't know what you could afford at $100,000 a year, a $250,000 house? Would you say that's probably that much?
At least.
So that's 2.5 times your annual income. But during that time, you have to pay for the furniture, you have to pay for the electricity, the sewer, the gas,
Don't forget your car bill. You're paying for your car. Don't forget you got to eat, right?
You got to eat, yeah. You want to have some entertainment along the way. So you've got to pay all these other expenses. So you can't look at it like, oh my gosh, it's just this amount of money. No. There are other expenses, like you pointed out earlier, which ties this together. You have new things come up, like AI. We do need some oversight. Now that's an additional expenditure. You've got to think about these things. So you made an excellent point. That's all I'm saying.
But adding to the problem, Mike, is that person you just referenced making $100,000 a year, buying a $250,000 home.
Yeah,
that's great because they have a budget, and Americans households have budgets. The government doesn't. They just print money and increase spending, and increase the debt limit. But my point is that family that makes a plan that says, okay, I'm making $100,000 a year, and here's what I can afford. Now the government prints trillions of dollars worth of new money.
Yeah.
And your $100,000 a year pay
is worth $50,000.
It doesn't change.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens is that everything that you want to purchase, your utilities, your taxes,
cars, clothes, food,
all of that increases. So the money that you had budgeted for that portion of your non-mortgage payment
is worth less.
Well, it's strained. Okay. Yeah. So now all of a sudden you don't have the same style of living, standard of living that you had before government went crazy, and you wonder what happened. Well, what happened was government went stupid spending all of this money on this free stuff, Is Zelensky in Ukraine paying for everything that we're giving them? No, they're not. No. We're sent, the last amount of money we sent them was $62 billion?
Something like that.
Yeah. And guess what? We're not getting that money back.
No.
But some of that $62 billion, no doubt in my mind, went to pay for those new homes that Zelensky has in 5 different countries. Okay, I'm just saying. Even Ray Charles can see that,
A blind man can see it.
Yeah. So what America has to do is, and I'll be honest, I get mad at the media when the media is covering this subject of the 1,500-page bill, the 110-page bill or 115-page bill, and then the skinny down bill again that changed the dynamics again. It was very, they start saying, well, President Musk is now calling the shots. Now, the media, and I'm not talking about one media channel, I'm talking about dozens of media channels, right? What they're doing is, because they know that Donald Trump has a huge ego, right? They're needling Donald Trump into thinking he's not really the president.
Yeah.
And they expect him to do something stupid.
I don't think it bothers Trump. I think he sees right through it.
And I don't think he's going to do something stupid. And I agree with you. I think he sees right through it. But my point is that those are the infantile games
Amen.
that the Fourth Estate is playing while we have this huge,
problem.
Very important, very substantial, very... This problem touches everyone's life, okay? There's not anyone in America that is not impacted by what's going on with our national debt, our continuous printing of new dollars without anything else changing in the economy. That's the inflation factor, and it's worse. There's other things as well. The cost of goods, our trade imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody in Japan or China or Vietnam makes a pair of shoes and it costs them $12 to make the shoes, but then they're imported at a rate of $65 a pair of shoes or whatever. So they're literally developing value, from the $12 to the $65. They've increased the cost of labor and raw materials by $43 per pair of shoes. Now that money likely goes to an American corporation, but my point is that having it imported from Vietnam, we're at a trade imbalance with Vietnam, meaning they have more of our dollars than we do. And when they want to trade those dollars in, or if they want to keep them, guess what we have to do in order to convince them to keep the dollars?
What?
We have to raise the interest rates on the Treasury bills.
Mm.
If we want them to keep the dollars rather than sending them back to us, we have to say, okay, buy a Treasury bill and we will give you 12% interest.
It's
now,
basically a bribe.
Treasury bills are not at 12% interest because, Treasury is a cut is aligned with the, with the Fed and the, but our nation probably should have interest rates at the 8 or 10% rate, right? And what do we have them at? 2 or 3%, 4%, something like that. Very low. Do you know why we can't increase the interest rate to the level it needs to be. By the way, when we increase the level of interest rates, you know what people in America do with the money from their paycheck?
What?
They put it in the bank and save it.
Well, yeah,
right?
you can make money, you save it.
Absolutely.
You can't make money,
right?
you don't.
So if you put money in the bank and you're making 0.25%,
Yeah.
you say to yourself, why the hell am I leaving
Yeah.
the money in there? I might as well spend it on candy and gum and pizzas because I'm not earning anything.
I'll invest with Paul Pelosi and make 65% return.
Well, but again, you see how it's interlocked, right? If we raised our interest rates to 8 or 10%, we would pay an 8 or 10% interest rate on the trillions of dollars in treasury bills that are outstanding.
That's right.
The interest rates on our debt would be about the money we pay on national defense.
Yep.
Okay, so we're caught in this no-win circle because of our overspending. There's too many dollars. Because there's too many dollars, and we have to give people some reason to hold on to those dollars. We put it in treasury bills. And then because we have it in treasury bills, we can't raise the interest rates at home to encourage people to put money in the bank, which helps us with the capital we have in the bank so we've got this never-ending circle of we're eating our young. And I don't mean that literally, I mean it figuratively. But we're in the spiraling circle and getting the debt under control and having a government that works with a balanced budget. You know, most states work with a balanced budget.
Well,
Did you know that?
they can't. Well, they go into debt, but they can't print money.
No, but my point is that almost every state of the 50 states has a law in the books that says they must have a balanced budget. They can't spend more money than they bring in taxes. That's why in California the taxes are so high, because they stupidly spend stuff on so many stupid things, but they just tax people more.
How'd they get so deep in debt?
Because,
that's another story, right?
Well, you know, one of these days, I'm not sure California has a balanced budget act, but at any rate, you know, most states can't spend more money. Now, there's funny ways they do it. They overestimate their income, and they spend more. So that's part of the way too. Well, our income fell off. You know, we had taxes on buggy whips, and damn, we didn't make as much money on buggy whip taxes as we thought we were going to make. Anyways, we're ranting and raving. How long have we been doing this, Mike?
Just about 37 minutes.
Did we talk about your issue of what the debt ceiling means, why it's important, why the United States Congress must get a hold of this issue? And it's hilarious to me. Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. He's a Republican, and he gives us a 1,500-page bill. Hey, Mike Johnson, excuse me, I'm sorry, McFly, anybody in there? Did you watch the last election? Did you see what the people said, both with the Electoral College and the popular vote?
Yeah.
Trump said he's going to do what they voted for. So they take the 1,500 page and they make it 110 or 115 page. It's still too much, and it has the increase in the debt ceiling. So they fix it again, and so more people voted on. And honestly, I think the Democrats just voted on it so that there would not be a government shutdown under the Biden administration. Because let me tell you something. They don't care whether or not Donald Trump has a government shutdown or not. They would love to have that as a political issue. Donald Trump shut down the government. Don't vote for any Republican.
I remember him and who was the Senate Majority Leader back in 2018?
McConnell?
No, the Democrat.
Oh, Schumer.
And Schumer, and Trump sat there and told Schumer, "Tell you what, I will. I'll take full blame and shut down the government." And that was it. It's like you could see it. Anybody. All I was going to say to finish up is I like the transparency of Trump. You could see him negotiating live in a live press conference. Okay, you're forcing my hand. I'll take responsibility. But everybody saw that it was really Schumer that was causing the problem.
And the Senate oftentimes is the problem. Like, we're all happy because the House passed this bill to pay, but the Senate is oftentimes the bully in the back room. The Senate will call over to the House and say, "Listen, you do what you want. We're not going to pass that unless this and this and this is it. We're not going to pass that." And the bill has to pass both houses of Congress in order to be enacted into law, and then it has to be signed by the president before it's law. But Mike Johnson, in my opinion, should have known better. He shouldn't have allowed all that pork. Mike Johnson served in the House of Representatives so long that that's what he's used to. And I really hope that, you know, Musk and Ramaswamy are going to have an impact on our government spending. It's not just the Department of Government Efficiency of current programs, but I think what they're uncovering are these programs that have virtually no worth whatsoever. And, you know, what happens is people in local constituencies work to get a member of the House of Representatives elected. And then once that member of the House of Representatives is elected, those people who work to get that person elected on the local level, they come back and say, look, we need this new bridge, or we want our college to have a new ability to study, you know, what DDT does to the eggs of eagles, you know, or we want more money. We want to establish a program at this university to study how steroids affect the beef that we eat. Those kind of and studying the effects of steroids on beef is probably a good thing. But that local representative who gets this request from the people who helped get him elected, he goes to Congress and they say, look, we want you to vote for the spending bill. And the guy says, no, not unless my new program for study at the XYZ University studying the effects of steroids on beef, I'm not gonna vote yes. So they put that in there because they figure, you know, in a multi-billion-dollar bill, he's asking for 10 or 20 million. It seems so insignificant.
Yeah.
But what we got to do is we got to get rid of all those insignificant things because they all add up in the end.
They do.
And that's what Donald Trump, and you know, Mr. Democrat, Mr. Media, you can call anybody you want President of the United States, but I guarantee you nobody who works for Donald Trump does anything that he doesn't know about and approve. And let's do that with the budget. Let's do away with continuing resolutions. Let's get annual, fiscally sound federal budgets enacted, and let Donald Trump and the Doge boys be the ones that make that happen.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me. Mac and Mike
Out.
out.